Well, hi there and welcome to the Richie Allen Television Show in association with BVtv, Beyond Vision Television and DavidIke.com. Hope you're well. Hope you're really well. It is Friday, January the 15th, 2016. This is our first television show of this new year. So this is probably the last time I'll say Happy New Year to anybody. Shouldn't be doing it 15th of January, but there you are. It's great to have your company. Hayden Hewitt, my great friend and producer, will join us at some stage. Will he join us one or two times during this show? Lots to talk about, loads to get into. But what I'm going to do is, because this is recorded live in Manchester every Friday morning, I'm going to prove that it's live. I'm going to prove it's Friday. I'm going to talk about one or two things in the news right now. Breaking news stories this particular Friday. And there's a big breaking news story, which will be of huge interest to you, no doubt about it, and our viewers in general. And that is that criminal proceedings against the peer Lord Janner over sex abuse charges have been ended because of his recent death. He passed away, of course, back in December. We talked about it on this programme. He was due to face a trial of the facts, which is something that would have been held in his absence because it was ruled that he wasn't fit to stand trial. A trial of the facts where a jury would have decided based on the evidence at hand whether or not he was guilty. No, they wouldn't. They wouldn't have resolved whether he was guilty or not. They would have found one way or the other whether the crimes had taken place. It's all legalese, but you know what a trial of the facts is now. He suffered from dementia, allegedly, even though he was signing into the House of Lords, as recently as November. Yeah. I'll say no more about it. Prosecutor Richard Whittam QC said today that the law provided no circumstances whereby a dead defendant could face a trial, even a trial of the facts. And this is something I said over the Christmas on the Richie Allen radio show, when people were still hanging on to this idea that even though he was dead, that there could be some sort of a tribunal to assert whether or not he'd committed these crimes. I said no way. There was no legal basis for this, and it's come to pass. Now, also breaking while I'm talking to you now is another. I've given Hayden no room or no time on this because it's just come in this second, and that is that 12 former residents of children's homes have told the BBC that they were abused by Lord Janner. Cheers, Hayden, it's up there now. You can see it on the screen. 12 former residents have told the BBC today that they were abused by Lord Janner as criminal proceedings against the late peer end, as I just mentioned. Look, a number of alternative media producers and presenters will take all sorts of pot shots at Lord Janner, will make all sorts of claims against him. We don't do that sort of thing on the Richie Allen television or radio shows, but it's got to be said that based on testimony given to Channel 4 and BBC News, based on claims made by former Scotland Yard detectives, it has to be said, and it's easy to speak ill of the dead, I know, that it is very likely that Lord Greville Janner was a serial abuser of children and he has escaped justice. Well, we could make all sorts of claims about his illness. We could refer to what happened to Leon Britton, who died after a battle with cancer that we never knew he had. But again, it's all conjecture. I can't prove any of that. But here's the story that we're very interested in on the Richie Allen television show today, this Friday, January the 15th. And it's a story which appeared in the Daily Mirror newspaper yesterday. In fact, while I was live on the radio show last night, speaking with Michael Rivero, our great friend and colleague, I was tweeted a story which appeared in the Daily Mirror, which Hayden's going to flash on screen now. Lifelike child sex dolls created to stop paedophiles committing crimes is the headline. The story written there, as you can see, by Kirsty McCroom. The dolls were designed in the subheading, it says, by a man who admitted that he is sexually attracted to children and he wanted to help others control their urges. A company is manufacturing these dolls. Shin Takagi founded Trotla, a company which produces anatomically correct imitations of girls with ages as young as 5. As you can imagine, the general public has reacted with nothing but outrage. My great friend and colleague Hayden Hewitt, Michael Rivero, said on the Richie Allen Radio Show last night that this is sinister and sickening because it is attempting on one level, an argument can be made, to normalise the behaviour of paedophiles. Let's help them out. Let's give them another focus for their desires. What say you?
It's very hard to be dispassionate about this, isn't it? Because I know you tweeted this story to me when I was in the middle of the Live League show.
You were producing the Live League show,
and I looked at the tablet. I thought, I'm not going to deal with that now, because the first thing out your mouth is usually kill them all with hammers and fire, and that doesn't really solve anything. I think there is a fear that it will normalise the behaviour, certainly for some of the paedophiles. I mean, if you look at it completely dispassionately, the faux logic would be, well, if they're hammering away on a doll, who cares?
Who cares?
Nobody's hurt.
The desire to have sex with a child remains, of course.
See, that's the problem.
Yeah.
It is a problem. It's an abhorrent thing in nature and to our society. It's an abhorrence. Are you reinforcing it? Now, a lot of people can't say, yes, you are, or no, you're not, as if they know. It's not something we can play with.
No.
Because we've already found that chemical castration doesn't remove a desire.
Doesn't work, no,
just
we've
removes
seen that,
a certain ability. Aversion therapy works for some, but it's always going to be there.
Yeah.
So my fear is it's not just releasing the tension, but it is normalising the behaviour.
Now, you have, for years, to your credit, you've always kind of tempered the conspiracy theorists by saying, well, look, have a look at this point of view, or have a look at that point of view. You generally tend to keep an open mind. There will be those of us in the alternative media who will say, this can't be a coincidence. There's a massive investigation being subverted and perverted by the authorities in this country to prevent people finding out the scale of historic child sex abuse. There will be people in the alternative media who will say, come on, do we believe in coincidences?
Coincidences happen in every other aspect of life. This is why we were saying before, I'm always the grit in the Vaseline. I'm always in the awkward position.
Yeah.
Perhaps a terrible turn of phrase to use in terms of sex dolls. Other lubricants are available, not just Vaseline. How it doesn't actually divert from it, does it? Because what this story does, to be fair, to the general population, does not normalise paedophilia in the slightest.
No. Well, as we said, the reaction, and you saw it last night on social media,
before,
was outrage.
On a totally unrelated note, we spoke about what's happening in Rwanda, which you may or may not touch on, I don't know, and how that's being completely ignored. But if a Palestinian goes and stabs an Israeli at a bus stop, brilliant, we'll report it because it gets the ire on both sides.
Yeah, that's right, Jay.
Hating the Israelis or hating the Jews, whichever side where you fall, or hating the Muslims, brilliant. Two black fellas killing each other in Rwanda.
Yeah. Oof. That's a disturbing video, yeah. I don't know whether we'll get into that. We might.
No, but I was just using that as an example of normalisation.
People should go to liveleak.com.
If you wanted to normalise paedophilia, the last thing you do is give people the ammunition to hate paedophiles even more deeply. It's so ingrained, and rightly so, on our society.
It could have misfired though, Hayden. There might have been some sort of attempt to kind of evoke a sort of a sympathy for them, to try and place this alongside other addictions. It's just an addiction.
I think they could have done. Surely they could have done far better than these. They look. The little girl one at the top. It's like someone my son should be bringing home for a birthday party.
Yeah.
There's no way you can put that other going. Don't you feel better about a paedophile having a go on a life? It looks like a child's corpse.
It looks like a child's corpse.
So,
we'll leave it for there. That particular story. It's probably something we might revisit next week on the radio show. But it is Friday, January the 15th. I just want to mention briefly a couple of other stories. You will be aware now that a series of bombs exploded in Jakarta, the Indonesian capital, yesterday. 5 suspected attackers were among 7 people killed. So 2 people were killed and 5 suspected attackers. It was blamed very quickly on the Islamic State. And all I'm going to say on this is, and no more than that is what I've been crying and screaming and bawling about throughout my career in the independent media. When will people start asking serious questions about some of these explosions? Did Islamic State carry out this attack inside Jakarta? They very well may have done. I can't say that they didn't. But how, as Tony Gosling from BCFM, former BBC producer, said to me on the Richie Allen Radio Show last night, how can they know so soon after a bomb exploded, without any forensic examination of the crime scene? How can they know that it wasn't somebody who was under duress, somebody forced to wear a belt or a vest because their family were being held under duress? How do they know who the bombers were? And this is at the very heart of why the independent media exists. In the absence of any questions by the mainstream media, we're left here saying, well, look, come on, how do we know for a fact it was IS? How do we know this? How do we know that? Neatly packaged in 20 minutes on Sky News, you're told it was Islamic State, swallow it, move on. And that's the way it is. And I'm just going to run very quickly through the other big mainstream news headlines today. For all the alternative news headlines and news analysis, go to davidicke.com/headlines, of course. But the US election getting a lot of coverage. Donald Trump challenges Ted Cruz over whether he was born in Canada or not. After saying Trump that he wouldn't stoop to that sort of thing, I like Ted Cruz, you know. He's now questioning his birth. As my friend and colleague Hayden Hewitt will know, as you will know as well, dear viewer, you must be born in the United States or within the United States of America in order to qualify to stand for the presidency. Lots of stories today about Ebola. There's stories about the church sanctioning gay marriage in the United States and much more besides. That's pretty much the basic run-through of the mainstream news in Britain today. But a couple of stories that we want to cover in more depth. Now, this is something I've gotten into on the radio show this week, something which has really disturbed me. David Cameron, the British Prime Minister, pictured here, God knows where and when. I don't know where that's a genuine picture. I don't know where that was taken. Right, to more serious matters. Writing in the Times this week, David Cameron said that housing estates, especially those built just after the war, are entrenching poverty in Britain. They've labelled these over a number of years sink estates. Cameron said people are isolated and trapped in these communities. Within these so-called sink estates, Cameron said, behind front doors, behind these walls, families build warm and welcoming homes. But once you step outside them, you're confronted by concrete slabs, dropped from on high, brutal high-rise towers and dark alleyways that are a gift to criminals and drug dealers. Cameron went on to claim these estates must be torn down and affordable housing must be provided to people. Have a listen to this.
Estates, many built after the war, where people can feel trapped in poverty, unable to get on and build a good life for themselves. I think it's time, with government money, but with massive private sector and perhaps pension sector help, to demolish the worst of these and actually rebuild houses that people feel they can have a real future.
With greater intensity of housing as well.
In some cases, the odd thing about some of these high-rise blocks and the way that they've been structured is actually they don't provide a huge number of houses. And in fact, by demolishing them, you might be able to provide better houses and more houses at the same time.
But here's the really crucial question, because what they do provide traditionally is social housing for rent, people at the bottom of the heap. Will there be as many social housing units for rent after this project as there were before?
Well, there's always going to be. It depends how you define. You know, I think that
because I think you're
let me
cracking
be
down
clear.
on social housing.
I want affordable housing, and when people hear that
but
term,
that's a different term.
No, but when people hear that term, they often think the government means, oh, that's affordable for me to buy. That's great. I can become a homeowner. I can achieve my dreams. And then they discover that actually for years affordable housing has only meant housing for rent. I think we need both, but frankly, yes.
He wouldn't give Andrew Marr the answer, would he? And Andrew Marr, eloquent and intelligent and educated though he is no longer a journalist. Because a journalist would have ripped David Cameron to pieces based on what he just said there. But I'll get to that in a minute. For our listeners, our viewers overseas, a council house, public housing, are houses built by the state to be owned by the public, specifically for rent by people who can't afford to own their own home. It is essential. in any democracy, that housing be available to people who, for any number of reasons, because of social problems, because of mental problems, because of inability to work, to hold down a job, should be able to rent a house owned by the state, to be owned by the state forever and a day. I'll come back to that in a second, because at Prime Minister's questions this week, Jeremy Corbyn, the leader of the Labour Party, tried in vain to get Cameron to answer the questions that Andrew Marr had put to him a few days previously. Have a look.
Mr. Speaker, I noticed the Prime Minister did not give any guarantee to leaseholders on estates. And so there is another, probably larger group on most estates that I have a question to ask him on behalf of. A tenant by the name of Darryl, who says, will the Prime Minister guarantee that all existing tenants of the council estates earmarked for redevelopment will be rehoused in new council housing in their current communities with the same tenancy conditions as they currently have?
We're not going to be able to deal with these sink estates unless we get the agreement of tenants, unless we show how we're going to support homeowners, unless we show how we're going to support communities. But isn't it interesting, Mr. Speaker? Isn't it interesting, Mr. Speaker? Who here is the small c Conservative who's saying to people, stay stuck in your sink estates, have nothing better than what Labour gave you after the war? We're saying, if you're a tenant, have the right to buy. If you want to buy a home, here's help to save. If you're in a sink estate, we'll help you out. And that's the fact of politics today. A party on this side of the House that wants to give people life chances, and a Labour opposition that says stay stuck in poverty.
This has been predicted by a number of alternative news investigators, researchers, whatever you want to call them, for years. What the Conservative government wants to do is to eliminate the idea of social housing. Eliminate it. Get rid of it. No more homes owned by the state for the worst off in society. It's long been a plan of the overall agenda of the Orwellian super state. It's all very clever. So you say we want everybody to own their own homes. You humiliate people and you mock them and you treat them like zoo animals by taking photographs of the houses that they live in, and you undermine them and laugh at them. Look at the state of these places these people are living in. So we have to bulldoze them. These people deserve better. You know, a lot of these people have ties to these places. They've grown up there. Their parents grew up there. I come from Ballybeg in Waterford, a housing estate created by the city, by the government, affordable housing for rent. How dare they speak in those terms about human beings and their lives? We want to get rid of these sink estates. We want to make owning their homes affordable. Millions of people in this country have a home because council houses were built after the Second World War and the baby boom. It's a historic fact. Council houses, as I said, to repeat myself, owned by the people, owned by the state, owned by us. Secure. And of course, they're as important now today as they ever were. Millions of Britons cannot afford a mortgage. What they want to do, and we've seen this in recent years with the right to buy scheme. I spent 8 years on the Costa del Sol in Spain, and every second week I bumped into somebody who had bought their council house from their local council in the right to buy scheme, but couldn't really afford to do it, had defaulted on the mortgage and had to run for the hills, and the house was taken back by the bank. And that's exactly what's going on here. That's exactly what's going on here. They want to eliminate the working poor in this country. They want to create homelessness, which they're criminalising, by the way, and turf possibly millions of people out on the street. When Cameron was challenged about whether there would be social housing alongside affordable housing, he wouldn't commit to it. They want to give their mates in the city, George Osborne's mates, his mates in the city, the contracts to build these houses. They are not subsidising them, so they won't be affordable. They will not be affordable. So these tenants that they want to bulldoze their houses will then be told, we'll give you a mortgage, we'll give you the deposit, we'll help you with the deposit. These people are never meant to pay the mortgage. Come in on this, because I know you have a lot to say on this. I'm ranting now. No, I'm in rant mode, and I'm repeating myself because I'm so pissed off about this.
It makes sense. I'm going to give an example for those who might not be from this country or from elsewhere. In East Manchester, they built the Commonwealth Stadium.
Yeah.
They knocked a lot of small businesses down, factories, dirty garages and things like that. Great. Man City have moved in. Brilliant. There's a lot of money gone into the local economy. Great.
But not by the government, by
no.
by the people who own City now.
By the people who own City, and a couple of schemes that the local council have managed to push through. But all around there, there's an estate. It's called Beswick. It used to be called Bradford. It used to be Bradford Pits. The community's been decimated. 1970s housing, i.e. quite spacious, quite roomy. When they thought people, all right, it's a concrete hell, but you should have a full-size living room. You should have space. You should have gardens. You should have communal areas. Very wasteful by today's standards. They've been knocking down the old terraced houses around there. I guess it's called Eastlands now or something. And knocking down the 70s houses as well. And they've been replacing them. Now, bear in mind, up until very recently, this was the most deprived part of the UK.
Yeah.
Pretty much the worst. Crime, unemployment, no education, no facilities, no nothing. People were just pushed there and forgotten, and the inevitable happened. These people have got nothing. There are people that work around there, they've got nothing.
Nothing in.
They're at the bottom of the social ladder.
Yeah.
Some of them
Nobody
are reaching
gives a shit about them now.
They're knocking these houses down. They're replacing them with apartments that start at £140,000. Start.
Yeah.
For the shit ones. And houses that are over £200,000. Now, if the government gave you 5% of your deposit, how do you save up?
Spot on. Now, confirm to me what you just said there. These places have been bulldozed. People were renting those affordably for a long time to could afford to rent them. They're gone now.
Gone forever.
No more.
They went from the council.
See, we've been saying this for years on programmes.
Well, here's the progression. Council to housing association who bought them all. And they're gouging some of the residents.
All predicted in David Icke's books going back 25 years.
And now they're replacing them with houses nobody locally can afford. But the folks that work in the city of Manchester, well, it's only a 1 mile commute. What a wonderful area that could be if only we got rid of all the poor people.
Yeah.
And I can pretty much guarantee, hand on heart, whatever's left of that place will be gone.
Will be gone,
in the next few years.
Thanks, mate. That's really important, that. It's going on in this city. And this ties in. David often talks about the doc connecting. This ties into the junior doctors, doesn't it, Aidan? Ties into the junior doctors strike. Destroy the NHS. Make it out to people that junior doctors, and you could also bring education into this. Teachers are greedy. They're only out for themselves. They want all this money for nothing. They don't want to work. And what they want to do is destroy the NHS. They want to say we want doctors on call 24 hours a day. We want the same amount of doctors at weekends. And they peddle these fantasy stories about you're more likely to die of a stroke if you have a stroke at the weekend than you are if you have it in the week, which was taken apart by one of the panellists on the Question Time programme last night on BBC as being an utterly false study. It's completely untrue. What they want people to believe is, oh, well, look, we can't help it. These doctors are getting greedy now. We can't afford to pay them. But if we privatise it, Hayden, and you've got it here, have you? There you go. That's, absolutely spot on.
It turned out, for doing hundreds of extra hours and weekends, £2.16 an hour.
Imagine that.
On top. For a consultant.
Yeah.
Not even a junior doctor.
And people can't see this, Hayden.
No.
People can't see it. The audience on Question Time last night were kind of 60% were like, if it's true that you're more likely to be in a really bad way if you need a doctor at the weekend, well, the health secretary is absolutely right. No. This is incredibly sinister. What they want to do is get to a situation where they look like the good guys. We're doing as best as we can with these doctors, but they want more and more and more and more. So let's bring a private firm in to run it. Because a private firm is prepared to pay the doctors what they want. Everybody will win. The doctors will get what they want. You'll get better care. That is the plan. Privatise every square inch of ground. Every asset owned by the people of this country given away. I'm telling you. I've never been as pissed off. I've said it so many times this week on the radio show, this housing thing. It's absolutely insane. And we've seen it with the Chancellor of the Exchequer, George Osborne, instructing housing associations which run these council houses, telling them to begin a mass fire sale of these properties to the tenants who've been renting them for years but who can't afford to buy them. And Hayden Hewitt gave you the story there, you know, about what's happened here in Manchester. He's having some week, Cameron. This week he's also announced plans for every parent in the country to take parenting classes. You know, I'll read it here. This is from the Telegraph. All parents should enrol in state-backed parenting classes to learn how to raise their children properly. Cameron he did say, as he announced a new plan to stop families breaking up. You don't need a lecture from me or anybody else to tell you how sinister and Orwellian this is. This is about the state owning and managing every single aspect of your life. And I'll go further than that this Friday, January the 15th. It's also about them finding excuses to wrongfully take children from their families and place them in foster care and eventually adoption. And if you think that's conspiracy theory, read Christopher Booker in the Telegraph, read Ian Joseph's, and watch Emma Ibbotson and Pete Middleton's outstanding documentary film Traffic, which is available to buy for a few quid on Amazon. That's what this is all about. A multi-billion pound a year forced adoption industry where people are taken away, children are taken from their mothers because of pre-crime. Your mother suffered depression in her formative years. She was in hospital for a few months with depression 2 years ago before she had you. She's not going to be able to raise you. We're going to put the child into adoption. It goes on. It's the greatest scandal in this country that most people in Britain don't even know is going on. Incredible. Watch Emma Ibbotson and Pete Middleton's documentary, Traffic. Unbelievable. And Cameron talking about parenting. Hayden, didn't he once get so pissed that he walked out of a pub and left his child there?
Yep.
Yeah, that's a cheap shot, Rich. You know it isn't a cheap shot. I'm sure there are people watching this programme who lost track of their child when they were in the park or in the supermarket. I'm sure they have. But you're not the one talking about parenting classes. Where do you get the balls to talk about parenting classes when you walk out of a pub and leave your daughter there?
Richie, in the 1970s, my dad used to leave me outside the pub when he went for a drink. That was a long time ago. I would never turn to my dad now and say,
no,
would it be a good idea?
No.
I'll ask your advice. If I'm going to the pub, should I just leave... in the car, because obviously in the 70s you drove home after you had you.
Yeah, they did drive home.
Should I leave my son in the car? Would that be good?
Yeah.
David, who are Tories to tell us how to raise
to raise our children?
Look at the people they're raising. Somebody raised George Osborne. Hard to believe.
Somebody raised
apparently
George
somebody
Osborne.
raised that.
Yeah. The pigeon, man. I'm not going to get into that today. And I can't believe we're agreeing with Fox News here, but there's a first time for everything. It is 2016. But the Fox ladies are on the money when it comes to Cameron. Have a look at this.
Pakistani migrants. So I don't put a lot of faith in the British government. I don't put a lot of faith in governments, period.
Right.
And I don't want them telling anybody's kids what to do. I mean, I don't live there, so I don't really care, but it is a
Why
bad
would
idea.
you trust the government to do this, and why in God's name would you want them spending your tax dollars on it? I mean, don't they have anything else to do? Sure, having a first child is isolating and is difficult. I just don't think the government's the one to go in and help. I don't think their advice would be particularly valuable. I mean, they have bigger problems than this.
And that's not the function of government.
Problem.
That is not the function of government, certainly not in this country. And I think it's patently offensive that, first of all, there's only one way of raising a child and that the government has the answer.
Right.
And second of all, that parents wouldn't know how to raise their children otherwise. That no parent has ever picked up a copy of Parents Magazine and gone, really, you're supposed to feed them. Diapers, do you?
The ladies are right, but they're funny, but they're Fox analysts, so they're missing the point. It isn't about helping with parenting. It's about control, and it's about normalising the state's management of every aspect of your daily life, which I said earlier. And as my colleague, and I keep mentioning him because he is a sponsor of this programme, number one, but number two, I've known him years and I've read most of his books. He's been saying this for years. As the system's agenda approaches something like what they believe to be a conclusion of it, or getting there, it becomes more transparent, becomes more apparent. It's out there. It's out there. You know, the cheek of a Prime Minister of a country to say, I want it so that every parent in the country will have to take parenting classes. It's an outrage. We're going to take a break here with the Richie Allen Television Show in association with BVtv and DavidIke.com. Back with you in about 90 seconds.
Attention small business owner, when is a box more than just a box? No! Oh no, that's just weird. A box is more than just a box when it can give you a couple of extra hours in bed, or at the very least some time to do something more fun and or productive than bookkeeping. Just bang all your paperwork in a box and we'll take care of the rest. Accounts Direct. Accountants on your side.
Welcome back to the programme. It is Friday, January the 15th, 2016. I'm Richie Allen. This is the Richie Allen Television Show in association with BVtv and DavidIke.com. A couple of quick plugs before I talk about David's new book, because I really want to talk about that. I just finished reading it. A couple of quick plugs. LiveLeak.com is, well, it's one of the last great bastions of journalism in the world. It's a vanguard of journalism. I wax lyrical about it regularly. It's one of the world's biggest websites, but it's completely independent, and it's a video sharing site where you see videos featuring events, sometimes things that are pretty hard to look at, from war zones around the world, but the opinions and the ideas of people from those exact areas, from areas like Syria, from Libya, from Rwanda, from North Africa and places like that. Check out liveleak.com. The LiveLeak television show, which airs every Thursday, provisionally at 10:30 p.m. GMT, but it's moving around a bit. It might be 10 p.m. GMT. We'll see how it goes. But check it out. Follow it on liveleak.com. My radio show is at richieallen.co.uk every Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. GMT. And as I said, check out davidike.com/headlines. I want to talk to you about the Beyond Vision Foundation in a second. But before I do, this is David Icke's new book. It's horrible, isn't it? Not the book. But it's the green screen, isn't it? Yeah. It's the green screen, yeah. So I can't show. We'll get an image of it anyway.
Well, no, talk about it.
Yeah, you'll find an image of it, yeah. See, the proof that it's live, you see. The cover of it is green. And of course, we use a green screen in our virtual studio here, as you probably know anyway. But Phantom Self and How to Find the Real One is David's new book. It's going to be widely available in late February, early March. It's currently available to order now, to pre-order, and if you do, it'll be sent out to you next week and you'll have it several weeks before everybody else gets it. It's an outstanding book, it really is. I know there are those of you watching the programme who say, well, you would say that, but that's not the truth. It isn't. I wouldn't review it. I wasn't asked to review it unless I liked it. In fact, I've just begun reading it for the second time. It's a terrific book. I've never read a book like it before. As Hayden, it's flashing everything and anything on the screen there. I've never read a book that so neatly and simply and understandably knits together historic geopolitical events and current geopolitical events to describe what David has said for so long is the virtual reality type programme is that we believe is our real world and our real existence. It's an outstanding book. It's bang up to date with geopolitical events and it's full of optimism and hope. I mentioned in a review I wrote about it the other day that it's a siren call to the masses too. There you go. Thanks, mate. Spot on. That's the cover of it there. It's a siren call to the masses to get up off your arses and take back your own sovereignty. Great book. Phantom Self is available now. But before we move on into part 2 of the programme, where we're going to talk about the abhorrent normalisation of civilian casualties in war zones, which I'm going to try and not get mad when we're talking about this, but we generally tend to get pissed off talking about this. But before I do that, I want to talk about the Beyond Vision Foundation. Now, BVtv is part of the Beyond Vision Foundation. And to quickly tell us about the Beyond Vision Foundation and a new Indiegogo campaign to raise funds for that is the architect of the whole thing, the author of the idea, the brains behind it, Hayden Hewitt himself.
Thanks, mate.
Yeah, I've pretty much built you up there. You don't get built up like that anymore.
But to be fair, I'm all that.
You're all that and more. So BVtv is part of the Beyond Vision Foundation. Remind the viewers what the Beyond Vision Foundation is and wants to be.
The Beyond Vision
charity.
Foundation is a registered UK charity, which is being established to be a charity platform. So it won't just be BVtv. There are other charitable causes and ventures that are going to be launched off the back of that, because the people we formed it with have been working in charities predominantly about empowering young people for years and years. So this is what they do. The BVtv model fit because I've always been about giving people a voice, and I always wanted to do an online TV station, but by my own rules, not with backers, just build it from a tiny crumb. And it made sense to me. It's like, well, surely if we're going to do that, and we want to get behind people that should have shows and get behind talent, we have to help young people who don't have a voice. So instead of just taking a film crew of social workers and sticking a camera in their face and telling them what to say, we'll teach them how to make the
And that's the way it usually worked.
Of course it does.
Yeah. And you tell them what you want them to talk about.
But through through training
them, really good.
We're going to give them all the technical knowledge about how to create digital media, but also own it. Don't learn to be an editor or a maker, because you might not get that job at the BBC. But learn how to do everything, from getting the idea to how to build a synopsis, to script it, to film it, to edit it, to do the effects, to do the graphic, the whole thing. And not only that, help improve their communication skills. You know, if you ask one, what do you think of your science teacher? And he says, oh, he's a dickhead. Okay, you wouldn't want your nana to hear that. Why? And bring it up, but give them ownership of it. And give them something they can commit to and be a part of. And by the time they're finished here, if they finish here, they might carry on using the facilities. It might not give them a job, but they will go away all the richer for it.
And they'll understand the media.
Yeah, we're not going to hold their hands and be a social worker and tell them what to be. Yeah. We're going to say, here are some tools.
Do you know what I think? I think it's one of the most noble things. It's never been tried before. I think it's a wonderful thing. One of the consequences of this, one of the great benefits is, I think younger people, by not being in any way given any editorial policy, because what you're doing is unique. You're completely saying, you do whatever you want, we'll show you how to do it, which is amazing. They will undoubtedly then begin to see themselves the flaws in commercial media, and they will start to see how they're being manipulated.
Not that would ever have been my intent.
No, of course not.
Of course
I'm
not.
looking at that angle, of course, yeah. But it's not a wonderful thing. Now, you're making programmes like the Richie Allen television programme at the moment. You're making a really, really great fan show for Manchester City with Colin Manford, which is great.
Yeah, of course, Colin being a comedian at Christmas, you might as well try nailing fog to the wall.
Yeah.
But the plans for the programming
These Charming Fans, by the way, it's called.
Yeah, These Charming.
Morrissey was a United fan. It's a disgrace, but I'm not getting into that now.
We don't do a United show yet. Can't imagine why. We've got the 2 shows in production. We've got the Live Leak show, which doesn't really count because, heaven help us, we don't want that anywhere near anything of any civilised character. We've got 3 more in pre-production going from business. We're talking to some guys who are part of very big in the Afro-Caribbean community. Again, not about it makes it sound like you're doing some kind of hand-wringy social workery.
Yeah, you're not. I know exactly what you're doing, yeah.
But also we will be supporting alternative news. It's not an alternative news channel. I'm not saying there won't be one in the future, but it's not one.
No.
But if we find someone that we want to get behind, we will.
And enterprising businesses, new up-and-coming businesses that just cannot even dream of affording advertising with commercial television stations.
Well, that's the last part of the
is something else that is really important.
The last part of the puzzle is that because of what my company Beyond Vision Media does and who we're associated with here, is that we have to support small business as well and give them tools they would never normally have access to, and lower that barrier to entry for a small business. Give them access to new audiences to sell goods and be out there. And so the goal, I guess, the end game is that everyone's happy. The people producing the show, if there's money made, they get some. If there isn't, we invariably take the hit.
It's an amazing idea. It's going to happen irrespective. But the Indiegogo campaign was set up to make it happen that little bit quicker.
Yeah, we've banged one up that we don't have any celebrity endorsement or anything, and we're not putting budget into that.
Flash it up there, the Indiegogo page,
so
people can see it.
Budget into making these things.
There it is, yeah.
So you can go on there, and there are perks already. We'll add more. If you think of a better perk, let me know. We'll add it.
It's up there for 2 months. It's only just been launched, and like you said, there was no big celebrity endorsements. There was no big, massive launch of it.
No,
but it
also
is there.
This isn't about sustainability. This isn't asking you to give us money or it collapses. One way or another, this will happen.
It's going to work anyway.
It'll happen slower. What this will do is accelerate it. We can get more kids in, we can get more kit in for them to learn on. We'll produce more shows. Things will happen bigger and better.
It's a great idea.
But we'll just keep plugging on. It's been a few years in the making already. So
it's been something you've been working at and thinking about for a long time.
Oh, you know it, yeah.
And it's brilliant. We'll talk about it on the radio show next week. Folks, we live in an inverted world. It's a lunatic asylum, I believe, where the most insane ideas, where the most abhorrent ideologies and realities become normalised by the media. Things that should have us marching with pitchforks and torches in the streets have become normalised by the media. I want you to check out this exchange between Russia Today's Guyan Chichikian and Mark Toner. Now, Mark Toner is a US State Department spokesperson. Have a look at their exchange about civilian casualties.
What does the number of civilian deaths have to be for you to call it disturbing?
Well, again, I don't think, so when we're talking about civilian casualties, what we always say, and I think live up to, is the fact that we always seek to minimize civilian casualties. What we have also said about what we've seen as a result of Russian airstrikes that have been carried out in Syria thus far are what appear to be excessive civilian casualties in some of these airstrikes.
Would you consider 50 civilian casualties to be an excessive number?
Again, I'm not going to put a number on it. I'm just not going to do that. And
I did not get a number, but the State Department official did concede that there's a certain calculation of collateral damage for high-value targets here.
Calculus, so a particularly important target, you'd be prepared to tolerate a greater number of civilian casualties.
Again, I'm not going to give you a formula for that. I think,
no, but
obviously.
You used the word calculus. I'm just trying to.
No, I understand it.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be facetious at all. I'm just trying to say that these are very difficult processes and very difficult decisions to make, and obviously we're dealing with.
And the insanity about all of this, of course, is the idea that it's okay to kill people like you and I. It's okay if, in the greater scheme of things, we knock out some crazy jihadist whom, by the way, we funded, armed and trained and set to kill in the Middle East. The idea that that's okay, to describe a person as collateral damage. How could you not come to the conclusion that we're led by psychotic monsters? The rule of law has no place in modern life. It does for you and I. You know, you can't go 3 miles over the speed limit here without getting a ticket in your letterbox 4 weeks later. You weren't even aware of it. You know, you don't pay your council tax. Give you a laugh about council tax. We pay it, even though we think it's absolutely abhorrent and it's wrong. We pay it because we can't be bothered dealing with it. We can't be dealing with the nuisance of it. And you pay every month, you pay £133 or £134 a month. And you pay it every single month. And I think we were late by a couple of days in December. We got a letter in the door saying to us that we'd have to go in front of a magistrate. We'd have to pay 82 quid unless we paid the balance, which is £300. Even though we'd been paying every month along and just been a couple of days out. This is psychopathy, this, isn't it?
Just for your benefit, anyone else that watches, went through this with a
The things we
relative
tolerate.
recently. You know that letter, you'll be in front of a magistrate.
Yeah, yeah.
If you went to that court, you wouldn't see a magistrate.
You don't see anybody.
You see a representative of the council. Then it'll go to, but you'll never talk to a magistrate.
Oh, that's madness.
So,
thanks, Hayden. Our listeners are constantly bombarding me with emails saying, don't pay it, don't pay it. Listen, future Mrs. Allen, you know what, you might as well be talking to the wall. She's going to pay it and that's it. You know, and anything to avoid the hassle and the bother of it. Look, the carnage in Syria and Iraq and who's responsible for it, no point in me going over that again. We know who's responsible for it. Michael Rivero to me on the radio show last night, it's never been more evident. All the evidence is there as to who created ISIS. And the pathological liar, the Rothschild Zionist David Cameron, was asked in the run-up to the vote on whether to bomb in Syria or not, was asked by Angus Robertson about the 70,000 moderate secular Syrians that apparently are standing by, right, like the attack of the clones. They're just there waiting for us to bomb a clear path for them to take on ISIS. Thanks for the story, Hayden. Before the vote about these alleged 70,000 moderates. This is that exchange between Robertson and Cameron. Have a look.
On the 70,000, the advice I have is that the majority are made up of Free Syrian Army. But of course, the Free Syrian Army has different leadership in different parts of the country. The 70,000 excludes those in extremist groups like al-Nusra that we will not work with. But as I said very clearly, I'm not arguing that the 70,000 are ideal partners. Some of them do have views that we don't agree with. But the definition of the 70,000 is those people that we have been prepared to work.
The 70,000 excludes those in extremist groups like al-Nusra, he said. Excludes those in the run-up to the war. Voting for the war. I love that, Hayden. I love that. David's comment, yeah. 'Tis true. I only kill people moderately. Shouldn't be laughing at it. 70,000 excludes the extremists, says Cameron. He was very definite about that when he was asking the Commons to support bombing in Syria. On Tuesday of this week, though, he seemed a little bit less sure. This is him being questioned at the Commons Liaison Committee.
That's why I urge you again that if you want people to be able to make an informed choice between the options of a secular, brutal dictator and an Islamist alternative, we really ought to be told more about the composition of the allegedly moderate forces that we are now mounting airstrikes to support.
Well, I've given you my answer about what we're going to publish, and I'm not going to change that answer. What I'd repeat again, though, that yes, some of the opposition forces are Islamist, some of them are relatively hardline Islamist, and some of them are more what we would describe as more secular Democrats. But I would make the point there are groups like Al-Nusra Front or Jundal Aqsa who we wouldn't work with, who we condemn, So I think, but if you're arguing there aren't enough, we need to build them up. No. Yes, we do. There aren't enough of them. I agree. We've got to start somewhere.
We're running over the same ground.
I know, but that's the point. Every day we don't support moderate forces.
Now, in a democracy like the one we allegedly inhabit, he would have to resign after that. He would have to resign for lying pathologically to the British public last December. But he won't, because it's the norm. This government is working with governments like Saudi Arabia, for heaven's sake, a tyrannical regime. Less than 2 weeks ago, murdering 50 dissidents in that country, executing political opponents. Nimr al-Nimr and everybody else that were executed there. There's still a teenage boy facing execution by crucifixion there for standing against the government. And even if you believe the Western propaganda about the Assad regime, you know, and its lies, look, I've never claimed that an autocratic regime or a theocratic regime is great or it's any good. I never claimed that if I was living in Syria that I wouldn't want to see the Assad family regime replaced with something resembling democracy. But most of what has been said about conditions in Syria, about Assad, are absolute lies. But even if you believe the lies we were told about Syria, it would still be a paradise, Hayden, compared to Saudi Arabia, wouldn't it? Yes, it would. Yeah. Let's be honest about it.
I mean, we can't go to war against Syria and have Saudi as an ally.
No.
It can't. I can't see it. I can't see how that's possible. How can we ally to a country that does these things?
And claim another country is doing it. And did I read this week, my friend, that the Saudi Arabian authorities are seeking to prosecute people who compare them with ISIS?
This was a while ago.
A while ago, not this week. It's come up again this week.
Headphones off. This is serious business.
Serious business, this, yeah.
He put out that anyone that compares them to ISIS on social media will be sued.
Would be sued.
I tweeted straight away. I called them barbarous bastards.
We've got sod all. You can sue us for all you want.
Yeah, and they didn't even sue me. No one gets back to me, though. Even George Galloway won't reply to me. And he has a go at everybody.
Yeah.
Not me.
Gorgeous George.
I can't even get any love from George.
The world is mad, mate. It's a big year, though, 2016. It's a big year for Beyond Vision Television and the Beyond Vision Foundation. And it's a big year for the Richie Allen Show and the radio show. Big year. It's not because we have grandiose ideas about ourselves, but we've got big plans to reach more and more people in the coming 12 months. Big year for the child abuse inquiry in this country and for the unfolding events in Syria. That was the programme this Friday, the 15th of January 2015. Massive thanks to Hayden Hewitt for all his post and pre-production work on the programme and for his help during it. And to davidicke.com and all the gang there at davidicke.com for their support of the independent media in general. Have a marvellous weekend. I'll see you next week. Bye for now.